Welcome to Book Backstory. My name is Carla Brandenburg, and I'm an award-winning author of romantic suspense and paranormal novels. This podcast is a walk along my journey. I plan to interview some of my favorite authors, share with you some of the things that get me excited to write a book, and the stumbling blocks during the process. I've spent the last week in between projects. Generally, in the in-between, I start the next book. This time, I've been taking a break, learning new things, like producing this podcast. The best way to clear one's mind is to redirect focus. I've mentioned before how I like to get out into the world, see new things, talk to people. After I finished my first book, holy cow, that was 20 years ago, I read articles on how to spend the in-between time, and some of the ideas were loads of fun. To this day, one of the suggestions that stuck with me was about someone who was scanning ads in a newspaper and found something unique that they wanted to buy. When they went to pick it up, they sat and talked with the seller for hours. That conversation spurred the author on to write the next book. The article likened finishing a book to childbirth, where the author needs time to recover from the process. I totally get that. The process is exhausting and also miraculous. I grew that. I just recently watched a video of a haunted house in England, a new house, mind you, that gives the phrase in between a whole different meaning. The people who have lived in their house for 3 years and have documented poltergeist activity. Whether or not you believe them is another matter. I took a stroll through the comments, and as with most things, there are opinions all over the board. I think the one that resonated with me was how come they're not surprised when these things happen so suddenly. I will say the video is well done, real or not. I grew up watching haunted house movies, and they've always intrigued me. The House That Would Not Die, the original version of The Haunting, The Uninvited. My husband laughs at me over the last two. Who watches black and white movies? This girl does. Those were the days when haunted didn't mean slasher movie or blood and gore. The effects were subtle enough as to stoke the imagination, much like this video did. But I digress. I have just received edits back from my editor on Hill and Dale 5. This podcast is supposed to be about those things that excite me about writing, and I'm here to tell you, editor comments do that for me. The subject of her email is, "Yay, I liked it." The first two sentences in the email were, "You keep delivering the goods, I tell ya. Kudos on inventing a fresh new character for this familiar town of people." Yes, she's pointing out the things that need to be fixed after I've just spent months of my time trying to make it as good as it can be. Fixed, you say? I got something wrong? But here's the thing about a good editor. She balances that you need to tighten this part up a bit, or this characterization doesn't track, with the occasional LOL and oh, I like this. I live in dread of what I might have screwed up while I'm waiting for her to finish, in the in-between. And most often, after I get her comments back, the excitement stems from, oh, I can fix that, I can do this. In all our books together, I think there was only one where she told me she really hated one of my main characters, and I had to go back to the drawing board. My first pass of the comments is an overall. What jumped out at her? This is generally when I feel all hope is lost. Criticism tends to do that. Let me share with you some of what she found. First, you'd think as the author of these books, I'd remember the end of the last book. Silly me, one of the biggest things I missed in this book is when my heroine learns her craft. There's a 4-year discrepancy. This is one of those what was I thinking moments. Clearly, I wasn't thinking. She pointed out a few other things, like sellers need to disclose a previous fire when they sell a house. That's an easy fix. She points out a few things that aren't as clear to the reader as they should be. Also easy fixes. One of my common mistakes, and it happens in real life too, is that I lose track of time. Days get lost. Time goes unaccounted for. I've taken to working with a calendar beside me and doing an editing pass myself before I send it along to make sure I haven't skipped over an entire week or made reference to something that hasn't happened yet. My editor has also taken to notating days of the week in her style sheet to keep me on the straight and narrow. Yes, I have a couple of time warps to address, but thankfully this book isn't as bad as some of my other ones to repair. After panicking about my 4-year discrepancy, the rest isn't so very scary. Then I check the second file she sends with my edits, the style sheet. She breaks down the chapters one by one, along with the characters, and generally includes comments there that I need to pay attention to. There was that one book I forgot to check the style sheet. Oops. When I finished the edits, I remembered, and when I checked it, I found more comments that needed to be addressed. I told her what an idiot I'd been, and she lamented that she'd taken so much effort to frame her comments positively, and I'd passed right over them. She slapped my wrists. I've never made that mistake again. So now that I've reviewed all her comments, I start from the beginning again. This is generally when the excitement returns. I can do this! I'll be honest, I generally know what I've gotten right and what I've gotten wrong, and when she points something out, I kinda know it's coming. Even with my Sandra, the unlikable character. After I send her the file, I tend to run over the story in my mind to revisit those things I anticipate might need to be changed, so I'm prepared when the file comes back. When she told me she didn't like Sandra, I already had a plan of action to include more details into what made her the way she was. When I sent the revised file back to her, she approved. Coming back to the story after my editor has seen it reminds me how much I loved it while I was writing it. The things that inspired me to keep going. I'm re-energized by the comments from an industry professional who likes what I've done. I can actually craft a novel. There's such a sense of accomplishment in that step alone, and knowing the criticism I've received will only make the book better spurs me on to finish so I can share it with the world. Now the work begins. I start with the easy edits, commas, comma splices, typos, dialogue tags, and action beats, clarifying things that might not be so clear. My critique group calls this read what I mean. I can see it perfectly in my head, why can't you? Hint, because I forgot to put it on the page. I save the more detailed comments for the next pass, the check your facts, this can't really happen stuff. Here's a fun fact. My editor went to school to be a zoologist, and she worked that job for several years. When I was writing The Architect, one of my epitaph novels, part of the story is about black widow spiders. I do my research and learn what I can, but she's always there to catch that sort of stuff for me. She straightened out what a spider bite does and doesn't look like, and how much damage it can and can't do. She is an invaluable wealth of information on a variety of topics. In my current book, I have a police dog. She pointed out those things I got right and those things I got wrong. I take what she offers me and revise those rough parts of the story that need sanding or fixing. This can be as exhilarating as writing the first draft, the I'm making it better part. The creative part is a thrill, but I'm not going to lie. Checking and rechecking your work is tedious. As much as I love what I've written, inspecting every thread, every stitch, every seam is a pain. Reviewing the final product for errors is not about entertainment or reading the book. It's about evaluating every word you've used to make sure it belongs there. I do 3 final passes before I declare myself done, and on each pass I generally find that one stupid thing I missed on every other editing pass. I do a hard copy read, print the thing out and make notations in the margin. Then I do an auditory proof, where I have Word read it back to me and I follow along. This eliminates those things I miss because I know what it's supposed to say rather than what it actually says. Hearing it makes a difference. The third pass is an e-reader review. How does it look on an e-reader? 3 different formats. 3 different ways to trick the eye into actually seeing rather than inferring how the book reads. What was that meme I just saw? This is going to lose something in translation because it's a sight meme, but I'll read it slowly. According to a recent study, 7 out of 10 people don't notice when a word in a sentence is replaced by a musical instrument. Get it? Accordion? Ha. By the time a book is published, I'm so sick of reading it that I don't ever want to read it again. Here's the other secret about being an author. We do read our books again, and I'm willing to bet the majority of us will tell you how surprised we are that we actually wrote that. All the hard work pays off. The stories we were so excited to write turned out well, in fact, good enough to hold our attention one more time. That's the goal, after all, to hold the reader's attention, and it starts with us. After all, if we don't like it, our readers won't either. The winning title of this latest Hillendale book will be on the cover that I add to my website, and pre-orders should be available to those of you who want to keep up with what's going on in Hillendale. Listen in next week when I talk with author Maggie Toussaint. We talk about her dystopian novels, her Dreamwalker series, the Seafood Capers, and a sneak peek into her latest project. I think you'll enjoy our conversation. I know I did.